So this is one of those debates that just, it exists. Always has, always will. It's like arguing whether Michael Jordan or LeBron is the GOAT. But with franchises, I feel like it's even messier, you know, because it depends entirely on how you're comparing them. And this comparison specifically gives me indigestion. Okay, clearly not for you all, because the poll I put up was decisive, to say the least. Star Wars got wrecked. But I've actually low-key been dreading this, you know, because I'm over here feeling like I must choose between my children. And not that I have kids, you know, besides my fur baby Ahsoka, of course. But I imagine that this is how a mother would feel choosing between her two kids. For me, these aren't just comfort rewatches. This is not childhood nostalgia. I didn't grow up with either one of these franchises, okay? I actually watched Star Wars for the very first time during peak COVID. It's like, what, 2019 or something? I was in my early 20s, and I read and watched Lord of the Rings for the very first time only this year. So unlike most people in the fandoms, I came into both worlds as a full-blown adult, fully formed frontal lobe, build life experiences, touched by the cold embrace of betrayal, grief, and pain that only adulthood can bring. So because of that, there's no nostalgia buffer here for me, okay? There's no childhood distance. And somehow, you know, they still shaped my early 20s and turned me into this insane nerd that I did not see coming. Okay, y'all don't understand. Before 2019, I didn't like none of this stuff. Look at me now. Honestly, I wouldn't change it. But because of that, you know, the age that I came into it, it has made navigating fandoms a little weird, especially Star Wars, because the gatekeeping is kind of a lot.
What is the name of the planet that Leia gave Grand Moff Tarkin as the false location of the rebel base in episode 4?
Dantooine.
What is the name of the gunner in Luke's snowspeeder?
Dak.
Where is a woman's G-spot located? What?
Can Star Wars trivia even be trivia anymore? Like, because everything's always moving. Who the freak knows? But anyways, so my relationship to these stories is just different because I actually watch Star Wars in full chronological order. Like full chronological order from beginning to end, not release order, not the original trilogy first, straight through. So I didn't meet Darth Vader as a cool icon. I met Anakin Skywalker as a person. I watched him grow up, go through trauma, become a mentor to Ahsoka, trying his best while being very obviously neglected emotionally, seeing him being dismissed nonstop, but still expected to perform, lose himself in the most painful way possible. Okay, the dude got cut in half while on fire by his brother. So, Revenge of the Sith, for most people it's their favorite. It is my least favorite because that shit made me sob. Because when he became Vader, I didn't think it was cool. For me, he was just like a walking tombstone for someone that I had just spent months loving and cheering for. I was devastated. I think I was depressed for like 2 days. And mind you, my brother, he tried to warn me when I started Clone Wars. He said, don't get too attached to Anakin or Commander Cody, because he knows how emotionally intertwined I can get with stories and characters. But I was a lost cause. It was too late. So I give this context because unlike nearly all other comparison videos that have to acknowledge both are a great part of my childhood, like I just don't have that. And I think that because of the age that I was, I know that that definitely changes how I relate to Middle Earth and the galaxy far, far away. I love both of these worlds. They mean different things to me, and they both deserve respect. Except for Disney Star Wars. I will never respect that. Never. Because they don't respect the world that George created, they don't respect the characters, and they definitely do not respect the fans and the audience. So, they don't get my respect. Like, just look what they did. It's like that scene from Godfather.
Look how they massacred my boy.
With that, the rules, because this matters. Big reason this debate never dies is because depending on how you compare them, there is a clear winner. If you compare them as franchises, Star Wars wins easily. The scale, cultural saturation, merch, theme parks, spin-offs, expandability, but that's what it was built to do. And if you judge Lord of the Rings that same way, Lord of the Rings looks very small, limited, but that's not a flaw. It's a design choice. Tolkien didn't build something meant to expand forever. He built something meant to end. And that's why I'm not really interested in the franchise version of this debate. Not because I don't understand it, like I do. It's just a default boring argument and a million other people have already had it or are still having it. I'm not interested in that. It's kind of a low IQ argument. I don't know. What I care about is the story and its impact on us as individuals. So here's what I'm actually paying attention to as we go. I'm comparing how the worlds are built, what they're preaching, how heroes and villains are framed, and what it feels like the creator wanted us to walk away with. So all story level elements. If not, this would be a 10-hour video. And yes, at the end, I will commit the sin of choosing my favorite child. So first, let's start off with the creators and how they built their worlds. A lot of the difference between these stories, they honestly start with George Lucas and with J.R.R. Tolkien themselves, because I feel like you can't understand the stories without understanding the people who made them. And honestly, I feel like just looking at the authors does 90% of this comparison video, because who they were as people, it shaped everything. Naturally, Tolkien was a scholar first, storyteller second, Oxford professor of philology. I had to look it up because I didn't know what that meant. And in case y'all don't know, a philologist is a scholar who studies language through historical texts, manuscripts, combining linguistics, history, and literary criticism to understand how languages and culture have evolved over time. The dude was smart. He's all about languages, myths, etymology. His creative impulse came more from his obsession, his passion, how myths form, how history leaves residue. He was also deeply Catholic, very morally serious, very much shaped by World War I. His personality was more private, he's more meticulous, he's slow, he's a perfectionist. He wasn't trying to entertain the masses. I feel like he was just trying to preserve something ancient and meaningful, Lord of the Rings. And I feel like George Lucas is almost like the inverse of that. He's a filmmaker first, visual thinker, editor. He studied myth intentionally, especially from Joseph Campbell, because he wanted to communicate it, not to archive it in any way or study it. He's very future-facing, technologically optimistic, more so like spiritually eclectic, and personality-wise, he's a little bit more restless. I feel like he's more experimental. He's very comfortable revising, open to changing canon. His core instinct was translation, turning myth into something that the mass audience could feel like immediately. So of course, their worlds feel different. Tolkien, he built language first, then history, then maps and stories. Because of that, Middle-earth feels like it existed long before the reader showed up. The details don't always serve the plot of the story, doesn't serve necessarily anything having to do with characters, but rather they serve authenticity. The gaps are intentional because they imply lost ages. George always intended Star Wars for kids, even though half of it was about politics, but whatever.
Fans from the films that don't like comic sidekicks. They want the films to be tough and like Terminator, and they get very, very upset and very opinionated about anything that has anything to do with being childlike, which the movies are for children, but they don't want to admit that.
He starts with more of the story beats. You have the hero, the mentor, fall, redemption. Star Wars is designed for immediate interpretation. You know who to root for, you know where the danger is. Simple, you know, Jedi are good, Sith are bad. Light side, dark side. Planets function more like stages. Ice equals desperation. Desert, isolation. Even the symbols tell you what to feel. Blue and green lightsabers, you're safe. Red lightsaber, danger. Black outfits, bad guys. White robes, good guys. Very obvious music. You don't need hours of lore to understand what's happening. And that's not a flaw, that's the whole point of it. He said outright that he's a visual storyteller first. Canon bends if the story demands it. That images matter way more to him than the dialogue. That's also why the dialogue sometimes exists.
I don't like sand. It's coarse, rough, and irritating. And it gets everywhere.
So they both succeed, but for totally opposite reasons. Tolkien was doing the opposite. He's not trying to get a message across quickly. He's building a world that didn't give a damn if you kept up. I don't mean that in a mean way. You just built a world that it existed before you got there, so it doesn't need you to understand it to exist. Good and evil, they're not color-coded. And Middle-earth, like, it's not a sandbox. It's a very closed, established ecosystem. You don't choose a side. You're more so invited on a road. So you're not meant to cosplay Middle-earth. You're meant to be changed by it. I feel like Star Wars makes you want to have things. Lightsabers, ships, costumes. Whereas Lord of the Rings, it makes you want to be someone. Makes you want to be brave like Frodo, loyal like Sam, steady like Aragorn. Tolkien gives you weight, depth, and permanence. Lucas gives you momentum, clarity, and more of like that emotional punch. So let's get into the texture of these worlds. Star Wars is very dazzling, right? You have hyperspace, blasters, alien cantinas. It's almost intoxicating to the eyes, but it also feels very distant. A galaxy far, far away, if you will. Whereas Middle-earth feels rooted. A limbus spread, muddy paths, songs in the dark. Its beauty is more humble. It's almost more reverent. And that's really shown, I feel like, in the small details, like a hobbit carrying a friggin' frying pan into battle, Aragorn singing a lament in Elvish. Those things, they're not background props. They're threads that really make this world feel very lived in. I'll never lift an X-Wing. I'll never be able to force choke someone. And that affects me every day. Or jump to hyperspeed, you know, in a TIE fighter. But I can carry someone who can't go on. I can share bread with a friend. I can sing when I'm grieving. That's why Middle Earth, like, it feels timeless, because it's not just fantasy, it's a mirror of our real world. Now let's get into the music, because to me, this is even more of a place where the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Because music doesn't lie. It tells you exactly what a story wants from you emotionally.
If it's simple and if it's memorable and you hear it in the second reel and then you hear it in the fourth reel, you remember in the fourth reel that you've heard it in the second. There's a wonderful sense then of the audience, which they're not consciously aware of an inevitability, of something that they might even have predicted themselves. And that's part of the dramatic mechanism of pulling the audience in.
So let's take Duel of the Fates from Phantom Menace.
Then it goes from that into, it has to be something that kind of says, we're fighting back now.
And I just felt the way that George has staged that stage or stairway, I don't even know what to call it, the way it's done. It's so like a great pagan altar, if you can imagine that the whole thing seemed like a dance, a ballet, a religious ceremony of some kind. And that the introduction of a chorus might be just the thing.
When that hits, the chanting, the speed, the choreography, I'm locked in. I'm hyped. I'm watching like it's a championship fight. Like I'm asking who's gonna win, who's stronger, who's faster, who's got more moves, who deserves it more. Star Wars music puts you into spectator mode. It activates that adrenaline. It makes power feel very exciting. It very much turns conflict into spectacle. Now, compare that to when that song begins to swell, Theoden says, "Ride now," and then the horns answer, something totally different happens inside of the viewer. At least that's how it went for me, because I'm not asking who's gonna win. I was thinking I would go. I was thinking, like, put me in, coach. Like, I want to go fight right now. And I feel like that's the difference. Star Wars makes you cheer, but Lord of the Rings music makes you rise. One fires up your nervous system, but the other calls your courage forward. And I feel like that's not accidental. Like, it's actually very much the worldview. Star Wars treats battle as something to watch, but Lord of the Rings treats it as something that you answer to.
More so than just scoring the film, I wanted the music to reflect Tolkien. I wanted the music to also bring the world of Middle-earth to life. Normally on movies, composers might work for 6 or 8 weeks, but Howard was with us from very early on in the shoot. So, you know, by the time The Fellowship of the Ring had been released, Howard had been on the film for nearly 2 years.
And then I feel like even more so with the Shire theme. That melody, it doesn't take you somewhere exotic. It doesn't hype you. It doesn't promise you power or destiny. It slows you down. It brings you back.
For all hobbits share a love of things that grow. And yes, no doubt to others our ways seem quaint.
Every time I hear it, I don't want to escape my life. I want to live it better. I want to notice things again. I want to grow something. I want to care for something small and real. I hear the Shire theme and it literally makes me want to go outside and touch grass, okay? And I don't mean that as an insult. Like, I mean it as a compliment, like that saying of go touch grass in its most literal sense. Like, it just makes me to connect with the actual world around me. You know, when I moved to New York, I had just finished reading it. It had really impacted me. I used to not be this way. It was like, I have to have an apartment close to Central Park because I need to be able to physically sit in the grass and pray and take my dog there and just be rooted in earth. New York, it's all go, 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 ambition, career, nightlife. But I knew that I needed the complete opposite of that. And I get that in Central Park. And I feel like that wouldn't have been something that I would have valued as much had I not just finished watching Lord of the Rings. Tolkien, he just loved ordinary things. The soil, gardens, meals, growing things slowly. That's why Sam loves gardening. It's not a random hobby, it's the moral center of the entire story. Most of us, we don't live in Hobbiton, but we all want what it represents. We want that peace, that belonging, a life that isn't constantly screaming for more. I feel like if you have to compare directly, Star Wars music says, leave this world behind. There's something so much bigger, better waiting for you. But I feel like Lord of the Rings, and specifically the Shire theme, it says that this world is worth staying for. With that, let's talk villains, because how can we freaking not, okay? Like, two of the most iconic villains that have ever existed. We know Darth Sidious and Sauron, they're both evil, but they operate completely differently. Sidious, he's super personal. He talks to you, flatters you, he manipulates everyone and everything at all times. Like, he's always there. Sidious wins by getting close to you, by sounding very reasonable, and by making you feel chosen. Evil in Star Wars very much has a face. It has a voice, a personality. It's quite literally personified, right? And I feel like that fits a story about identity, because if evil is a person, then defeating evil feels like eventually it's just gotta be a confrontation, like a big duel, which is exactly what we get. Sauron is the opposite. He doesn't chat with you. He does not explain himself. He doesn't care if you understand him or listen to him. Sauron he's pressure, he's time, he's erosion, he's temptation that works slowly. You don't defeat Sauron by overpowering him. You defeat him by refusing him entirely. Sidious wants to corrupt you directly. Sauron wants to break you eventually. One villain seduces, but the other waits. I feel like that's way worse. And I feel like because of that, in real life, much rather deal with a freaking Sidious, because Sidious is easier to just ignore as a human being in front of you, but it's so much realer to real life, even though we don't have physical rings of how evil operates. While yes, it does seduce like Sidious, it's not in your face. A lot of times, even the best intentions can still lead to evil. And I feel like Lord of the Rings actually captures what true evil is more like. And I feel like, it's kind of similar if we look at the mentors as well, right? So if we look at Yoda and Obi-Wan, for example, they're the teachers. There's a curriculum, lessons, rules, training. They prepare the hero for destiny. But Gandalf, he doesn't do that. He doesn't train Frodo. He's not micromanaging Aragorn. He shows up, nudges things along, and then disappears. Gandalf doesn't tell you who to be like Yoda and Obi-Wan did. He reminds you what the moment requires. And that's a huge difference. He just naturally elevated everyone around him because they deeply trusted him, not because they had to, because it was a master, but he treated everyone as a team, like he was very collaborative, like there was not a hierarchy. Whereas Obi-Wan and Yoda, like there was pressure to perform, not just to be. There was a clear status to achieve. You go from Padawan to Jedi Knight to Master, very clear hierarchy and an end goal for everyone. So the individual is completely lost for the sake of the system, and then the system fell. Even with the Jedi, he very clearly says that the Jedi are good and the Sith are evil. Yet the way that they treated Anakin was evil. They did not love him. Goodness and light is love, but they don't have any love in the Jedi Order. So I feel like Lord of the Rings is more consistent in those themes. And because of that, I think you walk away with a much clearer understanding or much clearer motivation of what kind of person you might want to be. And to that end, let's talk about some key themes, because y'all know I love dissecting themes. Even if no one asks me to, that's what I be doing. So Star Wars, to no surprise, is obsessed with identity, and not in a shallow way, like in a desperate way. Everything in Star Wars revolves around the question, who am I really? I'm a Sith, I'm a Jedi, I'm light side, I'm dark side. Even the Force is framed around identity. Are you the chosen one? Will you resist the darkness, or will you become darkness? Will you live up to what you're meant to be, or will you fail? Which even pulls through in video games, and one of their most popular OG video games, Knights of the Old Republic or KOTOR, a huge component of the game is literally making decisions all throughout the game that actively inch you closer to either the light side or the dark side. And that, that tension, it is compelling for a reason, but here's the limit to me of identity-based storytelling. Identity answers the question of who am I becoming, but it struggles to answer who do I belong to? And as I said in my last video, no amount of power or glory will ever replace the human need to be truly known and truly loved. So sure, in fiction, when you're consuming, when you're escaping and just watching a movie, we can just focus on, oh, who am I becoming? But in real life, in adulthood, doesn't let you dodge that second question forever. That's where Lord of the Rings does something radically different, because it's not interested in who you are in isolation. It's interested in who you stay faithful to when leaving would be way easier. There's no identity labels in Middle-earth. No one is self-actualizing. No one is curating like a personal myth or anything. Meaning lives in relationship. Frodo doesn't survive because he discovers his true self or some secret power. He survives because Sam refuses to leave him. Aragorn becomes king because people choose to follow him. Here's the cleanest comparison I can make. Anakin, he's obsessed with who he is becoming, and it destroyed everyone around him. Sam is obsessed with who he refuses to abandon, and it saved Middle-earth. And it's not just, you know, Anakin, but even the Jedi. The Jedi were focused on who's Anakin becoming. Are we managing him? Are we getting onto him enough? Are we keeping him in his place? It was all about managing Anakin's identity. Whereas in Lord of the Rings, everyone was just focused on supporting Frodo. Even though they had nothing binding them to that mission, to the fellowship, they all stayed into the end. It was never focused on who am I in this fellowship or who am I to Frodo. They were completely focused and obsessed with, I will not leave this group, I will not leave this fellowship. So isolation in Lord of the Rings, it's not just sad, it's actually very lethal. Every character who tries to carry power or purpose alone collapses. So instead of this self-actualization, Lord of the Rings, it openly celebrates and makes community the core value. Not romance, not destiny, not self-discovery, friends. Middle-earth is basically saying you are not meant to do this by yourself. Star Wars celebrates isolation. The hero has to leave. They have to separate. Even the big turning points happen in isolation. One person, one choice, one moment. Star Wars is all about finding yourself, even if it costs you all of your relationships. Like, it's not evil in itself. It's just a very different value system. Star Wars says, figure out who you are and the rest will figure itself out. Lord of the Rings says, stay, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, instead of just escaping and finding yourself and making that seem like the end goal. Because sure, it might be empowering in that moment, but it can be very empty as well. How good are your victories if not shared with others? Even the bad moments, those are the most powerful memories of my life. I think that community and being there for others leads to a more fulfilling life and something that I think is a better message for readers and for viewers. Another driving theme in both of these stories is its relationship to power. Star Wars very much believes that power can be used good or for evil. It just depends on who's holding the power. But Lord of the Rings, it goes much further. It doesn't just say that power can corrupt. It says that power is inherently corruptive. Power is never glamorous. The ring does not make you cooler. It isolates you. It consumes you and erodes you quietly. The ring poisons everyone who touches it. Boromir, Gollum, even Frodo. And that's why the strongest characters, they refuse power. Gandalf refuses the ring because he knows he would use it for good, and that's what makes it dangerous. Galadriel also refuses the ring, even though she would become beautiful and terrible as the Dawn, which, I mean, she's a better woman than I am, because beautiful and terrible as the Dawn? Sign me the up, baby. That sounds great. But I would have gone full Boromir. Clearly, I'm still a work in progress. Okay, so we're working on that. But anyways, especially when it comes to the chosen one, right? Because both stories have a sort of chosen one with Anakin and Frodo. But they do radically different things with that idea. Anakin is chosen because he's exceptional. He didn't have a father. He's just made from the Force. So he's stronger than everyone, midichlorian count through the roof. Like, he is central to the fate of the universe, and the story revolves around Anakin. From the beginning, the story tells him and us, you matter more than other people. And the tragedy of Anakin is framed as what happens when someone this important fails. And the weight of the story keeps pressing him inward. What do you want? What do you fear? What will you become? Like, everything orbits around his inner world. So Star Wars treats being chosen as a burden of greatness. And we see Anakin collapsed under that weight. Not because he's uniquely evil, but because the story keeps telling him that he's uniquely important. Then look at Frodo. He's also kind of like the chosen one, but not because he's exceptional. He's chosen because he's small, unambitious, unimpressive, ordinary. And Middle-earth does not revolve around Frodo's inner journey. It moves past him constantly. Kings are still fighting wars, armies rise, fall, like history keeps going. Frodo is not the center of the universe. He's just carrying something dangerous through it. No one tells him that the world owes him safety. In fact, the story keeps telling Frodo quite the opposite, that you will suffer, you will be changed, and you won't be rewarded for it. Tolkien does something brutal and honest here. Being chosen does not make Frodo powerful. It makes him burdened. And the hero, the literal ring bearer, he doesn't win. Frodo fails, and that matters. We see him being permanently wounded, like PTSD style. Star Wars treats the chosen one as someone who must be protected from breaking. But Lord of the Rings allows the chosen one to break and refuses to lie about the cost. Frodo does not get a victory lap. He does not get restored. He does not even get to stay in the Shire, because Tolkien understands something that Star Wars avoids, that some responsibilities save the world, but permanently wound the one who carries them. I also want to compare the treatment of male and female characters, because that's something I've always been fascinated by. So let's start with the dudes, or masculinity. Star Wars masculinity is about potential. You are powerful, you are special, you are destined, and potential, definitely, it feels amazing. But Lord of the Rings masculinity is actually more about formation. Aragorn's greatness is not in his strength, it's in his luscious hair. No, I'm kidding. But it's in his restraint. It's in his patience and his willingness to wait instead of take forcefully. Sam's heroism is not power. It's his loyalty, his faithfulness when no one's watching, and staying when leaving would definitely be easier. Boromir doesn't fall because he's evil. He falls because he wants power for good reason. And that's the warning. So it's easy to see why modern masculinity loves Star Wars, because it promises identity without discipline. Whereas Lord of the Rings demands something much more difficult: character, sacrifice, self-control. And that demand is definitely uncomfortable, which is exactly why it's better. And now I might get a little fiery here when it comes to femininity, but that's because I'm a chick, so it's on brand. These stories, franchises, they just go two completely different ways about what a woman is allowed to be. So let's start with the positive. Let's start with Lord of the Rings. Tolkien does not write women as accessories or as sidekicks or walking empowerment slogans. He actually writes them more as the center of the story. Galadriel is one of the most powerful beings in Middle-earth, but that's not what defines her. What defines her is her self-mastery. She refuses the ring, but not because she's afraid and not because she lacks ambition, but because she understands herself. She knows exactly what power would cost her: her tenderness, her wisdom, her ability to love without domination. She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. She doesn't posture. She doesn't conquer rooms. She orders them naturally with grace. Like, people literally leave her presence changed.
I have taken my worst wound at this parting, having looked my last upon that which is fairest. Henceforth I will call nothing fair unless it be her gift to me.
What was her gift?
I asked her for one hair from her golden head. She gave me 3.
Not intimidated, not just, impressed, but steadied. That's femininity Tolkien reveres. Now, Éowyn. People love to, just limit her to like the warrior girl. That just completely misses the point. Because Éowyn, she doesn't want to fight because she's strong. She wants to fight because she's in despair. She feels trapped, she feels invisible, she feels unchosen, like her life will never really begin. She wants glory because she wants out of her pain. She wants death because she doesn't see a future. And yes, of course, that doesn't take away from the fact that she's brave, she's fierce, she kills the Witch King. She's also a shit cook, okay? Like, no wonder why Aragorn was like, girl, if you don't go somewhere with that doo-doo butter soup. I mean, I'm just saying. Because Éowyn isn't the typical girl boss trope. She's a whole person. She's wounded, brave, awkward, desperate, shitty cook, and still becoming. And when she kills the Witch King, it's not a girl boss victory lap. Even then, it actually very much breaks the illusion that she was clinging to. She doesn't walk away empowered, she walks away humbled. And then she does something that modern stories are terrified to let women do. She actually chooses healing, peace, and love.
The city has fallen silent. No warmth left in the sun.
I do not believe this darkness will endure.
And that arc says something radical. That strength is not found in hardness, it's found in integration. Now, Arwen. Arwen's strength isn't in combat, dominance, which we all know she can handle her own. It's in choosing permanence in a world obsessed with escape. She gives up immortality, safety, certainty, not because she's dependent on Aragorn, no, because she's deeply rooted. Her femininity is her commitment. Her power is that devotion. She doesn't shrink herself to love. She actually stakes her future on it. So we see that none of these women are trying to be something. They already are something, and they walk and operate in the world as though they do know who they are, and it makes everyone around them better because of it. Now contrast that with Star Wars. Padme is intelligent, she's compassionate, politically capable, and deeply feminine. And notice what happens to her. As soon as the story becomes about Anakin's identity crisis, her inner life disappears. She exists to support his becoming. And when he loses himself, she literally dies. Okay, she wasn't even sick. She just died. Terrible, no complications of birth. No, she just dies. Her suffering does not redeem the world. It just fuels a man's arc. And as Star Wars moves into modern Disney era, the problem has only gotten worse, okay? It's not that it was a problem at first, because I do believe that George, he was very intentional in how he presented Padme and Princess Leia as strong and all those things. But like I said, it's definitely still flawed, but it's only gotten, oh my gosh. I wouldn't say it was a problem before, it's definitely a problem now. Female characters are written sealed off. They don't need help, they don't hesitate, they don't fail in meaningful ways. If they do fail, there's no consequences and there's no accountability. The only journey they have to go on is them realizing how amazing they are without anyone. Even someone like Ahsoka, who is well written, who my dog is named after, like obviously I love Ahsoka deeply, still shaped by this worldview. Ahsoka's growth comes from separation from the Jedi Order, from leaving, detaching from Anakin, whom she loved, walking alone. And I know that that's not a problem. It's not like in isolation with Star Wars. I know it's mostly just modern Hollywood in general, but we're comparing these franchises. So more so now, Star Wars Femininity increasingly says, be powerful, be independent, don't need anyone, don't soften, don't be claimed, and don't be vulnerable. Whereas Lord of the Rings says something that sounds almost offensive to modern ears. Like Lord of the Rings says, a woman's depth is not in her invulnerability, it's in her capacity to love, to commit, and to endure without losing herself. Galadriel's restraint saves her soul. Éowyn's humility saves her future. Arwen's devotion saves a lineage. They don't dominate the story, they anchor it. How powerful. And this is why I get so fired up about this. This modern Star Wars has started glorifying arrogance and entitlement and calling it strength, female empowerment. And you know what that's done? It's produced a generation of women and Star Wars. They're kind of like Star Wars Karens who genuinely believe that they are perfect as they are, so the world must be the problem. They walk through the world like it's something to fix, to correct, to dominate. This form of femininity and storytelling it's harmful, okay? Because modern women have become insufferable. Not all, of course, but it's a real problem. Hollywood is where freaking pedophiles, liars, and narcissists thrive. Yet they're somehow emboldened to try to teach us what it means to be a woman, to be a man, to be a good person. Hell no. I go to Hollywood for entertainment, not for theology or moral truths or purpose or meaning. Like, stay in your freaking lane. Tell him. Ahsoka agrees. Fired up too. Let the founder of femininity and truth and beauty convey that message, okay? Not some mini elite society who preach that all bodies are beautiful, yet actresses age out at the age of 30 and are pumped with so much Ozempic that you can see their skeleton, okay? You can see what Hollywood values by how it operates, not by what they put in scripts. Always remember that. Anyways, side tangent, but so contrary to most fantasy, sci-fi, and like fictional stories these days, it only makes my appreciation for Tolkien's world that much deeper, because he doesn't teach women to conquer life and he doesn't teach men to look out for number one. He anchors masculinity and femininity in deep moral truth, and truth stands for generations. He teaches both men and women to belong to the world unapologetically, without for a second diminishing their light. What would our world look like if men were trying to be like Aragorn and like Gandalf and Sam, and women Galadriel, Arwen, and Éowyn, you know? How much better would the world be? So, time to choose my favorite kid. To no surprise to anyone, I don't think this is a debate. Lord of the Rings wipes the floor in every category that actually matters. Because me personally, maybe because I'm grown, like I said, I consume these stories as a grown adult, not as a kid who just wanted to fight with lightsabers. And I am kind of still a kid. Like, I know how to spin a lightsaber. COVID was a weird time. Anyways, I can't spin a lightsaber. So obviously, like, all that stuff is cool. But like I said, I prefer stories that don't change depending on the year. Stories and characters that, if you embody them, can create a better world. And I don't mean this lightly. Like, these stories shape us, okay? They do. As evidence with these two fandoms. These two fandoms show up online very different. Star Wars viral content tends to be very loud, very reactive, people yelling about what they love or hate. I've you know, fallen into that. I made my Acolyte video ripping it to shreds because I was passionate, I was angry. We were like, do y'all see what they're doing here to something that we love? We have to just collectively complain about it, but then it just stayed there. And I didn't want to stay there. Like, I quit watching some of it because I'm just like, I can't live in this negativity. Like, just for the sake of content, no. Compare that to Lord of the Rings viral content. It's typically a lot more quieter. It's edits, maybe behind the scenes footage, interviews of the actors, tributes to characters. The tone with Lord of the Rings is very reverent. And stepping into the Lord of the Rings fandom this year, after years of only living in the Star Wars fandom, has been honestly like the best fandom experience of my life. Like, I'm shocked, okay? There's just so much love here, but I think it's rooted in the love and the care that Tolkien put into this story because he didn't write something that could be bastardized. He gave us a completed work. And I understand the pushback. I understand that Star Wars was ruined and the other one wasn't. And that's fair. And people have a right to be upset about that. But again, I think the deeper truth is that Lord of the Rings couldn't be ruined if you tried. Like, I know a lot of people are mad about Rings of Power, but did Rings of Power, did it break anything that Lord of the Rings gave us? No, because you can't, okay? The foundation that Tolkien laid is too strong. The story is complete. Even Peter Jackson, whenever he tried to deviate from Tolkien and in the movies, I'm pretty sure he was gonna have Aragorn have a face-to-face duel. He wanted him to actually face Sauron in some way. And even when he tried to deviate from that to have that big battle moment, he couldn't because the alternative just wasn't as good. That's how intentional it was. The story resisted being diminished.
And that we had to somehow have this personal duel between Aragorn and Sauron. And that's not in the book, but we felt that it had to be in the movie. It was not what Tolkien imagined. And we realized that was actually totally demeaning to what Aragorn was doing. The story was so clear as to what was happening that this was all about Frodo and Sam. And so Aragorn's heroism is not a one-on-one duel with the big villain. His heroism is his attempt to put his own life and the life of his troops on the line in the vague hope and dream that it somehow may give Frodo and Sam that little opportunity to help them complete their mission.
And there's even the cast, okay? Watching behind the scenes, you see the spirit of Tolkien carried by everyone. Viggo Mortensen literally broke his toe on set. Then we like kicked the helmet.
Each take, he kind of got closer and closer to the camera. The fourth take, I thought, was really good. I thought, well, that's pretty close. And then I thought, oh, look, he's got better each time. If I just give him one more take, I bet it's going to look great. So he boots this helmet. And then he let out this scream. I thought, wow, this is strong. I mean, this is like Aragorn is like just in total grief at what's just happened to Merry and Pippin. This is really cool. And he didn't say anything to us, but we found out that Viggo had actually broken 2 toes.
Sean Austin gashed his foot horribly in that river. Sean Bean hiked up a mountain in full armor, which is hilarious. Every single day, instead of taking a helicopter.
Again, with everybody flying in the helicopters, and as we flew over at 7:30 in the morning, we'd look down and there'd be this tiny black speck climbing the cliff. It was almost like a cliff face, and it was Sean Bean dressed up as Boromir, like a human fly on the wall, clambering up this mountainside all by himself to sort of get to the location because he didn't want to go there and shop ahead like 2 hours of climbing to do.
They used to see me from the helicopter, and I was sweating at the end. It was like a real adventure getting over that sort of mountain to get to the set, but I preferred doing it that way.
One of the great things about Christopher Lee is that he is a huge Tolkien fan, probably one of the biggest Tolkien fans that I've ever met. He's read Lord of the Rings every year. He reads it once a year and has done so for decades. He actually met Professor Tolkien once.
It's like an emissary, from the mists, like the ghost of Tolkien on the set.
The famous phrase, Ashnas Gurbatuluk, Ashnas Grimpatul, Ashnas Trakatuluk, Akbursanisi Kimpatul. One ring to rule them all.
Like, that's not a job anymore. That's reverence and devotion. And Star Wars had its own dedication. We saw Hayden and Ewan rehearsing their duel for Revenge of the Sith for months with unmatched precision. But the difference is that was more respect for the craft, for choreography. Whereas Lord of the Rings was respect for the story itself. Not for the performance of the story, but respect for this world that Tolkien created. The cast and crew didn't just work on it, they deeply believed in it. Even naturally of how the actors approach the work. That's what I'm saying, the world that Tolkien created, literally, it inspires better people. It demands you to be better. If you hate Lord of the Rings, you're either too young to understand it, or you're a shitty person, you want to remain being shitty. And I understand that it's oh, it's long and boring, and okay, then you just want that quick satisfaction. How does that show up in your real life? If you can't sit with the story and you can't sit with meaning, why are you constantly running? Like, again, I just think Lord of the Rings draws truth out of you, and that's deeply uncomfortable for a lot of people. So again, because of all the evidence of how I've seen how real people operate after coming in contact with the stories, the legacy, which one's impact cannot be diminished. Lord of the Rings, it wins, okay? Not because it's bigger, but because it endures. Because it doesn't just ignite awe, it forms character. That's the difference. One dazzles, one transforms. One creates heroes, the other creates better people. And when we ask which will truly stand the test of time, the answer is clear. Tolkien wins.